are starting from scratch, what are some things that we should absolutely keep in mind in terms of which curriculums we should be considering in terms of getting the most kids to be where they need to be?
Well, I want to talk about usability. English language, EL education is by far the most complex and the most difficult for teachers to learn to implement. We made modifications in Model Detroit, and we will introduce you to the people who are leading the Detroit school system, who we worked with for years, and those modifications helped, but it is an extremely complex curriculum. You're going to get great PD, but you need to know that that there's a steep learning curve.
And if teachers aren't bought in and brought in and believe in it, and it's a lot of work for teachers who didn't feel like they had any say in it, a lot of work. So,
and then you've got to consider turnover. Mm-hmm. If there's a lot of turnover in your district, then all these new teachers have to go through the learning curve for EL every single year. Bookworms is on the other end of the spectrum. It is by far the simplest to learn. The learning curve is far less than it is in the others. That's why Bookworms right now gets far stronger student outcomes within 1 year or 2 years than any of the other programs. The other three programs we've been talking about, Wit and Wisdom, Core Knowledge, and American Reading Company, are kind of in between in terms of implementation. So what a board has to understand when they look at these programs and they look at the usability of these programs and they look at how these programs are similar or different to what your teachers are used to, what are your resources for professional development? What are your resources to make any corrections or any stopgap type of measures? What is your teacher turnover? And how are your teachers going to react? I think that's essential because all the programs we've been talking about are aligned to the standards. Every single one of them, all of them grow knowledge, every single one of them. All of them grow vocabulary, every single one of them. All of them, except Wit and Wisdom, have a strong foundational skills program built in. Wit and Wisdom, you could go out and get a strong foundational skills program, as we've said more than one time. But if you do that, then you've got it, but you've got the additional work. So I think what a board needs to focus on is what's going to maximize our chance of getting results. You know, there's a expression in sports, something along the lines of nothing improves morale like winning. Nothing improves morale like increase in student outcomes. So what is going to get us student outcomes in a relatively short period of time should be seriously looked at by your board and your stakeholders. And usability, like we've been talking about, should be seriously looked at by your board and your stakeholders.
When you say usability, what specifically do you mean? That's why that question popped up.
How many different parts do I have to put together? For example, for EL education, you have a foundational skills program, scientifically based and sound, and a lot of fun, I might add. But the way they organized it, you've got a whole class lesson that everybody gets, and then you break up into 3 to 5 different groups based on where you're at on your systematic phonics knowledge. And the teacher has to organize those 3 to 5 different groups. They have to get the materials for 3 to 5 different groups. They have to plan a lesson for 3 to 5 different groups. They have to plan a lesson for the whole class. That would be an example of implementation. They have the modules. The modules for EL education are fantastic. Some of those modules involve collecting like 15 or 16 different sets of materials because they're like hands-on. EL came out of Outward Bound. They're a great believer in teamwork and hands-on work. A lot of our teachers aren't used to hands-on work and collecting 13 or 14 different artifacts for an English language arts lesson. So that's a steep. Those are 2 examples of a steep learning curve.
And the other examples, there may be 20 or 30 pages to read before every lesson for the modules. So you've got the whole foundational skills side, what David described, but then you have the ELA modules that have also a ton of teacher preparation and reading. So we have there's a school near us, and we live in a rural area with low teacher turnover because it's too far to drive anywhere else. And EL was piloted And one of the authors of the K2 materials led the pilot, an amazing PD person and talented educator. And she piloted with just 3 teachers that she knew. And they basically stopped in the spring and said, this is our family life is suffering. My marriage is suffering. I cannot recommend this to the district. They were really conscientious teachers, but they were working 6 hours a night because they were really trying to do all of it. So to do it well takes a lot of time and probably 3 years to ramp up and feel comfortable so that you can start to embellish and make it your own. It's a delightful curriculum, but that's it's a big price to pay.